What's up, everyone? Today we are going to be painting the Cultists from Mansions of Madness 2nd edition. With this guy, we're not going to do anything too special because we're going to be focusing on trying to turn them out quickly because we've got 6 of them to paint. We're going to be doing 3 different colors for their robes and 2 different colors for their pendants and their little stabby things. So let's get down to the table and I'll show you how it's done. Alright, first we're starting out with him being completely covered in black primer. If I had to do this again, I probably would have used a white or a gray primer because we're painting their skin and the black takes a ton of layers. Our first paint will be from P3, the Umbral Umber. You can use a real dark brown. And I'm using a standard Army Painter, the Wargaming Regiment brush. This is going to be for his entire cloak. It's probably going to take about 2 layers of coverage. If you're getting complete coverage with a single layer of this real dark brown, then you probably have it a little bit too thick. You're going to want it to be thin enough that a single layer does not cover it. His cloak is going to be multicolored by the time we're done, but just make sure you get the front, the back, his hood, basically all around him. I decided to go with a real dark brown to make it sort of like a monk style cloak rather than like a white cloak. So there's after 2 coats. You can see it's nice solid thick like chocolate color, like a dark chocolate. And I'm using Vallejo's Model Color Flat Flesh, which is just a fleshy tone that I like to use for the pale-skinned people, which you think that these cultists haven't actually been out in the sun in a while, so probably makes sense that they are pretty pale. I had already painted the hands before I showed you. This is going to take multiple layers, and this is why I think that if I did this again, I would not have used a black primer. I definitely would have used a white or gray primer, because here is coat number 2. So you saw coat number 1, coat number 2. There's again coat number 1 next to it. So we are painting 6 of these simultaneously. The first color that I'm going to use on the robes is flat green. I'm going to use this on 2 of the models. So I'm going to break the models into 3 sets of 2. We have 2 in green, 2 will be in a red color, and then 2 will be in an orange color. And I'm lining out the cloak here. Or, well, it's not really a cloak, is it? It's more of a robe. But I'm lining out the robe with the 2 pieces on the lapels, and then right down the front of the robe. It's also going to go along the bottom. There's also, where I'm showing you here, is all going to be green. So here he is completed. This, again, 2 coats. You want it to be nice and solid. But I thought that this flat green looked really good against the flat brown, the real chocolatey brown there. So here it is with Vallejo's Model Color Flat Red. So any sort of simple red color. And then I used Vallejo's Game Color Orange Fire. This one took about 3 coats. The Vallejo's Orange Fire is a really pretty orange, but I found that it doesn't cover as well as the other ones did. This is the Citadel's Mechanica Standard Gray, so this is just a basic gray, and I'm using this to do the mustache of the cultist here. They have a real thick handlebar mustache and a little tuft of hair that's coming out the top of the robe. So you're definitely going to want to color those in, and I picked 3, 1 of each color, and did Mechanica Standard Gray for the hair and the mustache, and then I picked 3 and did black for the hair and the mustache. So you'll be able to see that in a second as well. So here's the Vallejo's Model Color Black. Just use any kind of standard black, and then you cover in black there. So we've got 3 guys that are possibly slightly older than the other 3 guys, and that gives us a bigger variant. So now we have 6 unique characters here. I'm using Citadel's Agrax Earthshade, and this is fine for their skin, for the robe and for the colored areas. I put it on a stick here rather than holding it so I can get everything. Accidentally bumped the camera right there, but going through and just covering everything in this Agrax Earth shade. Agrax Earth shade. There we go. Agrax Earth shade to make sure that we get it into all of the crevices. There isn't a ton of detail on these miniatures. They're actually really tiny, even in comparison to something like Zombicide's Black Plague, where they're 35mm miniatures. These guys are probably smaller than 28mm as well. They've got to be like a 25mm scale. They're very, very tiny, and they're proportional, so everything on their body is tiny. So after coating the entire miniature in the wash, I've now come back and used the same brush. I rinsed it, plotted it off on the paper towel, and then I'm going back through and getting any of the deep pools. So you definitely want it to pool in the cracks because you want it to look like this when you're done, but you don't want to have giant puddles of it, or else you're just going to get, it's basically going to look like brown paint was slapped on there. So we've got the Umbral Umber back, and this time we're adding some flat brown, so you can see the difference in color here. Real deep chocolate, and then that kind of a flat brown. And I mixed a little bit of the flat brown into it, probably, I would say, 10% flat brown, 90% Umbral Umber. And I'm just going through and getting all of the raised portions. So I'm not really removing the wash as much as I'm trying to accentuate the crevices. So I want all of those crevices, all of the places where the wash is supposed to sit, for you to be able to notice that wash, because as of right now everything sort of looks the same. So coming back through and getting all of the raised portions, make sure you hit the belt, hitting on the back side, the front side, all around. And so here is one of the other characters, and you can see I've come through, and you can see now there's sort of black or real dark lines through it rather than the entire thing shaded. And I didn't focus too much under the arms. I want that to remain dark. So now I've come back and I've done about a 50-50 blend of the flat brown and the Umbral Umber, and this now I'm going to actually use as a highlight. So this is going to get just in the raised portions. I'm going to come back and add streaks along the arms. Definitely get all of the edges of the robe, front and back, both of the sides, the hood, the belt area. This is an important part, to have a nice fine tip on your brush and just go through and highlight every little area. There's also, kind of hard to see, but right below where the brush is, there's a couple ruffles in the robe, and that's where I put some streaks going down there as well. And then I also went down to the very bottom and put some line highlighting on the corners of the robe, just to make the robe stick out a little bit. So pay attention in the next shot when we have the completed one. Oh yeah, don't forget the top of his head. You're going to want that to be lightened up, obviously, because that's getting the most amount of light. You're going to see some lines down there, down at the bottom, basically right where my thumb is where I put some in. So you can see them right there by my thumb. There's some little lines there all the way around the bottom, just to sort of bring it out a little bit more. And now, as you've probably guessed, we're going to go back, and after we've done, I did a couple more highlights on the very, very top of the arms with just pure flat brown. I didn't want it to get too bright because these guys still are, you know, hiding out in a mansion and they're in the dark, so I didn't want it too bright, but I did want to clean it up a little bit, add a little bit to that. So as you've guessed, we're now cleaning up the colored area. So I used the same color that we used to paint it, so flat green, flat red, and the orange, whichever colors you choose to use. I mean, you could use purple, you could use a blue, anything would probably look good on these guys, because the brown is neutral enough that as long as I think like a black might look a little weird, but anything kind of neutral is going to look good with primary or secondary color next to it. So I very simply just colored that part back in. And then here I've mixed about 25% white in with the red. And we're going to go down and edge highlight all of the red painted areas. So I didn't want to go to a pink. I didn't want to do like a 50-50 mixture. I wanted to do just a simple mixture to get the red to pop out. And so it is a brighter red, a lighter red, but not quite to where pink would be. I wouldn't consider this pink. But you're going to want to do this the entire way around. Here I edged the front of the hood. I didn't go any brighter than the 25-75 mixture. I think that is probably bright enough. You could take it an extra step if you wanted to and hit just some of the high points, like on the shoulders and the top of the hood, but I instead went back and did just a second coat on the top of the shoulders and the top of the hood. So there you can see that's with the green. So now he's got all his highlights on there. Only a couple more steps and we're done. So here's Ferry Flesh and the same Flat Flesh. The Ferry Flesh is from the Nocturna Fantasy Pro line, which helped put some awesome colors together to do fantasy style flesh of like witches and fairies and like demons, stuff like that. Some pretty cool colors. I like it. I enjoy it. But I'm using the basic colors here, the ones that kind of just look human anyway. So this is just the Flat Flesh. I haven't actually added any of the Ferry Flesh yet. This was just to come back and lighten it up to its regular color, because the Agrath Urkshade had really darkened it down a lot. So I wanted to add definition back to the hands. So we're coming through and getting the top of the hands, the fingers, and the H area on the face, basically over the eyebrows, down the nose, across the cheeks, and then a little dab on the chin. So if you keep these colors thinned down, you don't have to worry too much about getting too much color on any particular area. So here there was a cut here and it didn't look like there was, but that is the Ferry Flesh. So I added about a 50-50 of the Ferry Flesh. And what I was going to say is, even though it looks like I kind of globbed it on there, because it is so thinned down, the camera picks it up very bright, but it actually isn't that much on there. And you'll see later that you can see here, it just sort of fades into like a glow on his cheeks. I wouldn't put too much on. I would kind of clean it up if that happened to you, but the fact is these guys are so small and the models aren't great. I didn't care too much. What you saw there is I have a copper color and a steel color, and I used them to do both the pendant on the chest and the little stab thing that he's got. And I again picked 3 of one to get the copper, 3 of the other one to get the silver, the metal, the steel. And then I'm using Brain Matter Beige to do the eyes. So I'm just showing you how to turn them upside down and put way too much on there. So I went back and fixed that one. That one is not acceptable. But there you can see I put in a little black dot, and then just keep some of that Ferry Flesh near you so that you can go back and put it over there. And so here's a guy that is all finished up, but with the gold, and here they are. So there's the 6 of them. You can see there's 3 different bronze, 3 different silver, 2 different green, 2 different red, 2 different orange, 3 different black hair, 3 different gray hair. So we got a nice mix of all different kinds of color schemes on these guys. But overall, they're pretty easy to paint, but they are not the greatest models. Mansions of Madness from Fantasy Flight isn't they weren't selling it based on the models. They're selling it on the wealth of gameplay that's in this game. So it's okay that they're not, the most excellent sculpts and high quality plastic. But overall, I really enjoyed painting them, and I really enjoyed doing this voiceover for my very first painting video. And I will see you guys all next time. Please like and subscribe, as I do more videos for you coming up soon, and I'll see you around.